Let's bring in Jason Chaffetz, former chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, a Fox News contributor as well. All right, Jason, so it sounds as if when you look at the number of people who have already tried to get loans through this program, something like $70 billion has already been processed, 250,000 small businesses so far. Clearly there's a need, and clearly perhaps they underestimated how much money they would need up front, or is this just how Washington works? Get a little now, get a little later.
It's just how Washington works. They got the money out in a remarkable fast time. I talked to a company yesterday who actually got funded. I realize there are a lot of others that are waiting, but I think Congress knew that $2 trillion was already a big number. They needed to start this, but they knew that there was going to have to be this fourth package to come in behind it. Hopefully they don't lard it up. The Congress is notorious for doing it, but hopefully they don't lard it up with a bunch of other garbage, but they probably will.
Yeah, it's that, and they got to also find a way to get the money that's already been earmarked to the right people, to small business, and the unemployment money that's given to all the states. The states aren't equipped to give anyone unemployment. So what are people going to do as they wait for their $1,200, as they wait for their loans, the grants, and they wait for their unemployment checks? Meanwhile, Bill Barr was on with Laura last night and talked about where this whole thing started in China and the lack of accountability in China, and WHO always siding with China and not telling us the truth about how bad things were. Bill Barr weighs in.
The bigger threat to America's election security, Russia or China?
In my opinion, it's China. And not just to the election process, but I think across the board, there's simply no comparison. China is a very serious threat to the United States, geopolitically, economically, militarily, and a threat to the integrity of our institutions, given their ability to influence things.
Is this the time to take them on, or do we wait for the pandemic to subside? If, in fact, Jason Chaffetz, you do agree with Bill Barr's assessment.
I think Bill Barr is exactly right. Obviously, you worry about Russia, you worry about Iran, you worry about North Korea, but long-term and short-term, China has the resources, and they're generally much smarter and much quieter about how they go about corporate espionage on our government, on our military, what they're doing in outer space that a lot of Americans that don't have any exposure to. There's a reason why the American president, Donald Trump, put up a space force, and China is a big part of the reason why to do that, but also the economic ties. And when we throw out $22 trillion in debt and then go to the Chinese and the Japanese and the others and say, hey, buy our debt, we create and exacerbate the problem. And so the Attorney General is exactly right. And anybody who's looked at any intelligence in Washington, D.C., certainly during the years that I was there, recognizes that China is the biggest threat.
So the Trump campaign is saying that the establishment, Democratic Party establishment, won when Bernie dropped out yesterday and leaving Biden to get that presumptive nomination. Last night, Bernie was on The Late Show after dropping out, and this is what he had to say.
I hope to be able to work with Joe to move him in a more progressive direction. And I think Joe is a good politician. And he understands that in order to defeat the president, in order to defeat Trump, he's going to have to bring new people into his political world, and that he's going to have to listen to their needs, young people, working people, and maybe start moving in a different direction to some degree than he has in the past.
Jason, you think that'll happen?
Oh, Bernie. He didn't really get out of the race. He just sent a Trojan horse in there to try to disrupt the entire Democratic Party. Bernie never joined the Democratic Party. He was the major disruptor, and now he's going to cause all kinds of headaches for Joe Biden. If I'm the Biden camp, I am absolutely ticked at this guy. Instead of wrapping my arm around Joe Biden and saying, hey, let's get behind and support him and defeat Donald Trump, he didn't do that. He told his people to keep on going, keep fighting, go to that convention, let's effective platform that works all to the advantage of Donald Trump. It's going to make Joe Biden do things that are worse than he wants to do. And remember, Joe Biden has his own problem. It's Joe Biden. Joe Biden was elected 4 years before Jimmy Carter became the president of the United States. The guy has been locked in Washington, D.C., and now he's got this Bernie Sanders problem, and he's got a Donald Trump who's doing an A-plus job on this coronavirus and an economy that I do believe will come roaring back.
Well, you know, maybe we were talking to Chuck Roker. You know Chuck, just about 50 minutes ago, Jason, and he said, look, this has been such a crazy primary season. You never know what's going to happen next. So you're right. It throws a monkey wrench into the Joe Biden campaign. But ultimately, Bernie's looking for influence, and he wants his supporters to feel like somebody's listening to him. Otherwise, they're not going to show up for Joe. Watch this.
I think he's encouraging all of his supporters to actually show up. We want to make sure that our voice is heard at the convention because we have a diverse party. We want every faction of the party to be heard at the convention. Our coalition couldn't win the general election. Joe Biden by himself and his coalition can't win the November election against Donald Trump. Together is the only way that they have any shot at all of winning. And look, we may not get everything that we want, but there has to be some kind of coming together of everybody to make sure that we can defeat Donald Trump.
You know, Jason, before the pandemic really came to the United States, it was all about politics. It seemed like that was our lead story for so long, for months and months and months, about the campaign and the primary season. But now, until this thing gets better and we cross the peak and we go way down the curve, are people really tuned into this?
No, and what Bernie Sanders did yesterday is just acknowledge reality. He can't have his rallies. He can't go out and campaign the way he traditionally did. And so when he says he's leaving the race, he's not really getting out of it because he's telling people to fight on. He's getting the Joe Biden supporters out there to kind of lay down their arms and say, yeah, you know what, we're not going to fight anymore. And meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is going to, people are going to continue to show up.
Jason, let's be honest. It's going to be Barack Obama against Donald Trump. Joe Biden's going to go out there, say a few words. Hey, did I tell you I ran with President Obama? And he is going to be going the whole summer. That's what this is going to be about, and that's what's going to be intriguing. I'm sure we're going to hear more about that shortly. Evidently, he talked to Bernie Sanders a couple of days ago, which led to this. Jason Chaffetz, thanks so much.
Thank you.